Winter Moon, by Naomi Wicks. Chapter 1. I ignore the roaring heat and shouts of warning. I run over dirt that was stomped into the floor by intruders. There's no trace of them now, except the bodies they've left throughout the palace. Their saliva has dried to a crust on their victims' faces where they spat. Urine evaporates from the feet of our religious statues, and leaves an odor that stings my nose. The artificial papyrus plants have sunk into their ceramic containers. Wax dribbles down the walls and congeals with human blood. There's carnage everywhere I look. We were so dreadfully unprepared. I race past the corpses to get to my mother's chambers. As I stop, the dust billows into the room like a dry, sandy sigh. Drapes have been pulled across the empty window frames, as tall as the walls. The glass melted years ago and any remains were eventually smashed, to allow in as much air as possible. But fresh air tastes old and warm these days, as though directly from someone else's lungs. It's even stuffier in here now, as dark material shields us from some of the glare. Slithers of light continue to bounce off the Queen's treasures. It's like blades, slicing across my eyes, and I look at the floor. The blood and sweat she lies in are tepid. She is surrounded by other, motionless bodies, though they don't concern me. Even if the genies of our court were up and walking, this room would still technically be lifeless. I'm looking for a beating heart. And I realize I can expect none. I step into the room. The genies on the floor don't move, though I'm sure they'll respond soon. I pick my way through them and my ankles are blown with hot air, billowing from their ventilation systems. I let the metallic smell mask what's drying around me. A mechanical hum around my feet is the only sound of activity as the first genie stirs, and opens her eyes. She has blood on her hands and pleated gown. Her eyes bore into my face, trying to make sense of things. She fidgets as she calibrates. I wonder if she even knows how much she's failed and can explain what went wrong. I stand over the bodies and determine for myself what happened. The invaders fled for a good reason. No one would want to be left behind during the start of a heat burst. Our palace, Argansk, has been without air conditioning for days, since our generator failed. And now I see. My mother suffocated to death, during childbirth. But is that what they'll say? Will they blame the heat, like they've done for hundreds of years? The genies' accounts will be unreliable due to system failure. Mortal voices overrule in any case, and my father overrules everyone. Burnt people have a smell and texture I'd recognize anywhere. This is a little different. Her face is wrought with exhaustion, and her lips crack from her effort to withstand pain, but she is otherwise unmarked. Below her waist, the sight and smell of blood is unusual, and it makes me queasy to see blood so red upon the rags. It's diluted with amniotic fluid. My stomach churns. There is another body. A small vessel that will never draw breath. I passed many corpses on the way, but I didn't really look at them. I've never seen one so fresh, yet unburnt as this. Perhaps my mother would have survived the burst, had she been moved to lower floors as swiftly as we were. Once the alarm went up, I was too preoccupied with my own speed against the invaders. I assumed the wife of the king would be in the lower chambers, before the shouts of warning had reached my ears. She should have been sent down there from the beginning of her pregnancy. My father ought to have taken better care. Though I wonder sometimes if he cared for her at all. Our queen, Galatea, is gone. And as she went she gave birth to even more death. I step back towards the door, without ever touching her. She'll be touched plenty between here and the winter moon. Her body will be polished and plucked back to normality. The child will be separated from her and undergo its own ritual. They'll have to go soon. The embalming process is too challenging here, on our mother planet. We haven't the water or oils spare, our reserves are on our moons. Salts, linen and fluids all await us there. Only the genies undertake the journey to the moons. Oxygen is rationed with such care, it's better to let those who don't need it venture beyond our atmosphere. Athena. Genium suddenly puts a hand on my shoulder. My own genie didn't ascend the stairs as quickly as I did. I'd hurried the length of the palace to my mother's chambers and didn't care if anyone followed. Now he's caught up, and grips me with his left hand. The right is a molten mess. He'd stopped me seizing one of the brass door handles, and opened it before I could. It was clear I was going to grab it, no matter what anyone said. The metal melted his skin as if he were made of wax, and delayed him enough to give me a head start. Are they all gone? I'm compelled to ask, though I'm sure if there were any threat I wouldn't have made it this far. Yes, it would appear so. But that's not all. His tone sounds authentically solemn. The king made for the launch stations alone. If Pole Trispan were the one behind this attack, he wouldn't have granted any of you your burial rights. Your father had one chance to embark for the summer moon, and he took it. He didn't send for your siblings or mother. He didn't even take Rogelius to serve him in the afterlife, just the king's guard. King Arathio IV is gone. He looks at my mother's body without a grimace. And his queen, it would appear. My condolences, Athena. I say nothing, and he pulls me into a tight embrace. He's programmed to recognize my needs and adapt. This isn't easy, considering my migraines and mood swings. He holds me close so my face nestles into his neck. As usual, he's reacted perfectly and I welcome his touch. He can't smell the sweat that soaks my clothes and lines my scalp. I bathe regularly, far more than any common person can. And I try to mask the scent with oils. But Genium won't know when it all runs dry and I stink of perspiration. I can worry about other things. I feel so guilty, I say. There's nothing you could have done. Behind both ears, his cooling system expels the air that would otherwise hinder his ability to function. He'd be on the floor with the others if it didn't. It whirs softly in place of a pulse. It's like feeling him breathe as he holds me. He's the only person I trust, yet I can't possibly explain my feelings to him. No one can understand my guilt and the thoughts I know myself to be unthinkable. I know there was nothing I could have done. My mother and father are both gone. And there is not a thing I could have done about it that I would have done, or would do, given the chance. The invasion has done me a tremendous favor. My mother can't have my father take Genium away from me. All I've ever loved is safe.